I would hope everyone should experience this in some part of their life. So maybe it doesn't happen to you with writing, but something else. Maybe you're cooking, or maybe you're, you know, I mean, it's that state where you just feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself.
You're watching Not Just Auntie with Suman Adepalli.
Women leaders and achievers are not just aunties once they cross their 40th, 50th, 60th, 70th, or even 80th birthdays. There are millions of women who are founts of wisdom and killing it in their fields globally. For example, Falguni Nair, a former banker, started Nykaa at the age of 50. Sheetal Bhatkar, a homemaker, feeds 2,000 families across Mumbai hospitals every single day. And because we want to share these amazing stories, we created Not Just Auntie, a channel that focuses on women achievers above 40. Our guest today is Rashmi Bansal. She is a best-selling author, entrepreneur of Just Another magazine, motivational speaker, IIM Ahmedabad graduate. Her first book, Stay Hungry, Stay Foolish, was a runaway bestseller, and it was on 25 MBAs from IIM Ahmedabad who went on to create super successful businesses. A few of her other popular titles include Touch the Sky, Connect the Dots, and her latest book, We Are the Champions, released at the Jaipur Literary Festival in 2020. Her top 10 best-selling books have sold more than 1.2 million copies and been published in 12 languages. She is the #1 business book seller in India. Now, she conducts writing workshops as she also mentors young entrepreneurs in the Ashoka University. Rashmi and I go back a long way, and one of my most fulfilling projects was working with her on the biography of Neena Lekhi, the CEO of brand Baguette. We will be profiling and speaking to Neena Lekhi as well in the coming weeks. Welcome to the show, dear Rashmi. I'm really honored to have you as our guest at such initial stages. Actually, when I see your bio, which I've just introduced, I feel that I'm the auntie and you're an evergreen Wonder Woman. Thank you so much for being such a willing participant at such an early stage.
Yeah, thank you, Suman, for having me, and congratulations on this new platform you've started. I think it's a wonderful initiative, and I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you so much. You today are the author of 10 best-selling books, including the runaway success, Stay Hungry, Stay Foolish. In fact, that brings me to my first question. You're an IIM Ahmedabad graduate. So after this degree, you went on to become an author. So didn't your parents expect you to do something more traditional?
Yes, of course. My father was a scientist. He was an astrophysicist at Tata Institute of Fundamental Research. So I grew up in this whole atmosphere of maths and science. And all the children in our colony, whether my age or older or younger, pretty much all of them went to do engineering, medicine, or they did PhD in biochemistry or something like that. But I think I realized pretty early that even though I'm a very good student at school, I don't have aptitude for maths. And so I switched to arts. At that time, a lot of people did say, ki, oh, like she used to be so intelligent, what happened? But I had promised my father that, okay, if I'm not trying for IIT, I'll try for IIM. So in that spirit, I gave the CAT exam, not really expecting to make it. And I didn't study that much for it either. And I think the fortunate thing was that the pattern of the exam changed that year. So people like me who hadn't practiced too much got the benefit of that. Admission to all four IIMs, and then I was more keen to join Bangalore because I thought they study less there and have more fun. But when my dad went there, and people said he used to visit Bangalore for work, so he just went to see the campus. So they were all shocked. Yes, kaise ho sakta? And later on, I thought, chalo, Ahmedabad bhi ghar ke paas hai. It'll be easier to come home on weekends and all, which I never did as such. But I joined IIM in that spirit that I want to just see what it's all about, and like what would life in a hostel be like. And I was quite keen to experience that. And I didn't want to have a regret later on in life that, IIM admission mila gaye nahi. So I really went with such an attitude. I know it sounds very odd to people today, But maybe उस समय IIM का इतना हवा नहीं था. I mean, there was a neighbor who even asked me, not a neighbor, but some auntie asked me, कि, didn't you get admission in Bombay? Why do you have to go to Ahmedabad to study? So, yeah, I mean, I think those were simpler times. I mean, it was prestigious to get in for sure, but it wasn't the ultimate goal of my life, which I would have tried for again and again and again, and, until I reached it. So, yeah.
Can we start with you talking about your first job? How did you go on to becoming an author?
So I started actually writing while I was a student in college. When I was doing BA Economics at Sophia College, I started freelancing for many different newspapers. And I wanted to be a journalist. I even had a job with the Times of India. They had a new paper called The Independent. And I had applied and got a position there. So they said, once you graduate, you can join us. But then instead of that, I went to do the MBA. Now, the 2 years there were really fantastic. I think they were, I mean, I would not trade them for anything in the world. But at the end of 2 years, I realized I'm not made for these jobs, of selling soaps and detergents and credit cards and so on. So I didn't take the placement. And I was wondering what to do. I had some weird ideas on what I could do. And meanwhile, the same person who had met me at Times of India came to recruit at IIM Ahmedabad. And then he said that, why don't you come apply for a job and I'll create something for you where you can be a manager and a writer. So I'm probably one of the only people who's ever worked at that company who had both the responsibilities. I was a manager technically by designation, but I was also writing. I was put in charge of a youth page called Indie. And, that's where I started meeting young people. And I wanted that page to be of, for, and by the youth. So everyone who wrote for it had to be a college student, a fresher, somebody who had new ideas, wants to get published. And then I thought after a year, it became very successful. So I got the idea of, starting a magazine of my own, which was quite crazy back then because we hadn't heard of anything called a startup, or we didn't even know there's something called entrepreneurship. My idea was that, look, I think I'm young, and if I start a youth magazine today, it makes sense. If I try to do this when I'm 40, it won't,
But you're an auntie.
no, me. So, I mean, we just were a group of friends who decided to get together and try something crazy, and that became Jam Magazine, which was my first, you can say startup. Yeah, it was a startup.
When you started Jam, I think that's when you met your husband Yatin. Am I right in this claim?
No, I met him before that. Yeah, no, we were already married when we started Jam. He was working in an advertising agency called Ambience, which used to handle Thumbs Up and many other such DHL and other such clients. So a few months later, he quit and he joined. And I was the editor and publisher, and he was, in charge of all the other important things like the marketing, the distribution, all the commercial aspects. So we had a very clear division of what I would do and what he would do. But nevertheless, it's quite crazy to have both people working in the same.
I was just coming to that question. Yeah, like how is, I mean, you're answering it. So, well, I think since I'm also in the same boat, like working with your spouse, tell us the pros and cons actually.
Yeah, I mean, the pros are that you can, be in your office till 12 or 1 or 2 and there's nobody at home waiting for you and crying that, oh, what are you doing? So it's your joint venture. It was like our first baby, you can say. And, but on the other hand, there is no space between the two people. And there is sometimes, you can't, communicate things which bother you because, you're worried about how the other person will take it. So it's, I think, difficult to establish a very good working relationship the way two partners would, in a business, because there are other aspects to your relationship also. And we were like barely married for 6 months when we started this. So yeah, it was, but that was where life took us. And I don't know if things would have been any different had we continued working in two different companies. That comes with its own, pushes and
cons. Yeah.
But as such, I would say that I've seen many such, partnerships between husband and wife. I'm not sure that I would really advocate that you do it. And if you do, maybe you should have very clear, very mature kind of an approach on how to deal with problems. And there could be different outlooks to life itself. Like, you
And
might want
demarcations of duties, I guess, that what that person does and what you do.
Yeah, but in any case, even in a newspaper, editorial and marketing are always at loggerheads. Even in Times of India, we used to fight with the marketing people. So naturally, as the editor, I'm not going to agree with everything the marketing person says, whether it's my husband or not. So it's a naturally inbuilt relationship of friction to that extent. Okay.
So didn't that make you wary that you had already had this experience in the Times for 2 years? Like, did it make you wary when you were getting into a role where you would be in editorial in the creative side and he would be in the commercial side and the
अभी इतना कौन सोचता है यार उस समय like यो जुनून है like you're just obsessed with doing what you need to do and see frankly our company wouldn't have survived without him because he was very practical and worldly wise. He knew that you had to get a release order from the ad agency. हमको तो उतना भी नहीं पता था. Okay, being in Times of India, I was not exposed to a lot of things because there was such a huge system to take care of everything.
that's
Can you imagine from one room we are trying to produce a magazine, distribute it. I mean, I really think we would have folded up in 2 months or 3 months if he hadn't been there. So yeah, it was I mean, I think we had a lot of fun. We put in a lot of effort. I think the main complication arises when you have a baby. Like Nivedita was born in August of '99, and actually, I don't think we again timed it very well because it was in the middle of this .com boom. Suddenly, I had my people, three people working with me would suddenly leave, because some .com has offered them 3 times the salary.
right. I was not working with you, but yeah, I've experienced this phenomenon.
So I barely took 3 weeks off. I was going to office till almost the last day, and then I delivered Nivedita. Then I took 3 weeks off, and then I was staying with my mom that time. And they were in Colaba, so I would express milk, leave it in a bottle, go to office. Like 1 घंटा आने का 1 घंटा जाने का 2 घंटा office, and we didn't have strong internet connection कि घर से बैठ के देख लिया. Right? I mean, today we have great
I
internet.
think 99 it was dial-up. I remember.
Yeah, we used to have this text-based account, and graphic was more expensive, and everything was very slow. And I had all young people working for me, and I'm being the editor. I'm responsible for what's published, so I had to go and see it, and sign off. Yeah, this can be published. It can't just go like that. So yeah, I mean, it was quite stressful. But again, I think if you ask like what would have been a better time to have a baby, there's never a right time or a great time because there's always something else happening in your life.
This is what each and every of the interviewees are saying. At different stages, those who have conceived at different stages, they go through their own set of problems. So you're right.
Yeah, I mean, now I hardly see any women having kids at that age. I was 28. I mean, mostly they're getting married at that age. So, well, there are also advantages of having a child a bit late. But see, you can either enjoy before or after, like then you'll be like bringing up the child till you're 60 years old. My mother played a very big role, in helping, her up with her upbringing because from the time my daughter was about a year old, we put her in a creche for 3 years. It was a very nice creche in New Bombay called Indian Women Scientists Association creche. And they took very good care of the children, but it was not very fancy. Didn't have all these, like nowadays you have very high-end creche. Aisa nahi tha. The caretakers were very loving. It was hygienic. It was safe, but it was not like super fancy. Okay. But the problem is these small kids, they fall sick quite often. So like every 10 days, 15 days, some problem, fever, ho gaya, ye ho gaya. My mother would come from Colaba, to take care of her, or then we would go there. So, I mean, I think for many years, she was always available on call and very supportive. And she never made it like a ehsan she's doing for us.
And I don't think women can have careers without this support system. I mean, it's always assumed that women are the primary caregivers. If there's a child, the woman is taking care. If there's a mother-in-law, the mother. So, am I wrong in saying that? Like, what is your take on this? It is assumed, right, that if you have a small child, you are going to be at home or someone from your family. And I think it's difficult to leave the child with a person who's getting paid or, without that supervision.
I mean, Yeah, it is. I think it takes a village to raise a child, and we are lucky that in the older generation we do have our mothers, mother-in-laws who are very supportive. And I don't know, like, are we going to do the same for our daughters or not? I don't know. I suppose we will, but right now, not very.
You'll be the grandmother who's on a laptop who supervises the baby playing around, so that's okay as long as you're
Yeah.
supervising. So
But also, I feel today's mothers, I observe my cousins and, what they're doing with the kids, they're like very, very involved, to the point of like, I don't know whether it's healthy or not. Like when I used to go to office, I used to not keep thinking and calling 10 times a day asking if the child has eaten and so on. I mean, I sort of
helicopter
I
parenting.
found trusted people and then I said, okay, things are fine. So my mind was not with her 24 hours a day, I would say. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but that was my approach. And I think that's where many women find it difficult to disconnect, even if they get good support from their in laws or mother, or they have good, house help to make sure that things are okay. They like to constantly micromanage. So I'm not in that category. I think maybe that's my personality.
I guess I think that is more for people who don't have that family support, not necessarily. I mean, I think the micromanaging happens when there is maids, only maids, because that was the case with me. So, yeah, I mean, I used to get nervous that, my child is with a maid or at a creche the whole day. But yeah, maybe you're right. I think women are generally hard on themselves, and there are so many of these parenting concepts, that you have to be there and you have to connect with your child 3 times a day, once in the morning, once when they come back from school, and once in the night, and in the middle there should be short bursts of love, and all that pressure, these parenting books. So maybe I think that's what you're saying, that women are just hard on themselves, or they want to micromanage because they want to be perfect moms. Is that what you're saying?
I think there is an aspiration to be perfect, which is increased over time. Sometimes also see a lot of women who are very highly qualified who've given up their career for their child. So then they want to make sure that this one project goes well, goes perfect. But I mean, I don't know, every child comes with their own destiny. So no matter what you do and how great a mom you are, I'm not sure if you can ever ensure 100% that the child will turn out in any particular way. Like if you are very ambitious for the child, they may actually be the opposite. I don't know. Every child has its own dreams and own way of looking at the world. So I guess the most we can hope for is that they are mature and emotionally stable, and able to deal with the very fast rate of change that is occurring in the world today. So they have to be more emotionally resilient. I think that's what
That's true.
is required.
So the next question: how did your phenomenal writing journey begin?
Even when I was in IIM, I think I wrote for the local newspaper. Again, I used to do it for pocket money, just for fun. Then with Jam, I became more of an editor, and I didn't write as much. So then I started writing again, somewhere around 2003-4, when I started writing a column for readif.com, and I started writing for Business World magazine. So I became very prolific in writing. I used to write a blog called Youth Curry, which I used to update around 5 times a week. After everyone has gone to sleep, I would sit up and just write something that I was finding interesting. And it was very liberating because, in a newspaper or magazine, you have to write as per a word limit, as per a format. But in a blog, you can write anything you want. So I just became quite prolific as a writer, and then I got this opportunity to do a book for IIM Ahmedabad Center for Innovation, Incubation and Entrepreneurship. And it came to me as a project. They said that, we're having a conference in June of 2008, and we want to bring out a book which will, just feature the stories of 25 of our graduates who have become entrepreneurs. Because up to then, the IIM Ahmedabad alumni body was known for getting lucrative jobs. Every year in March, you would have one article saying so and so got 1 crore offer, and that's what people associated with IIM. But when the reunions happened and people went back after 20, 25 years, they found that around 30% of the students were doing something of their own, whether of a small scale or a big scale, but they had branched out on their own. So, it was just a thought that let's give the students a perspective that, this is also a career path. You can start your own company, your own business. So I got this project. The initial idea was to just print 1,000 copies and distribute it free at the conference. It was not to be published as a book. So honestly, I could have just submitted anything of a reasonable quality. I didn't have to really work hard for it. But the moment I thought my name is going to be on the cover of this book, then I thought I should be proud of it. So I wrote that book with my whole heart and soul. I really put everything into it. And also every person I met, when I went to talk to them, interview them, they also opened up because I felt that I'm one of them. I have also run my own business and I'm also an alumni of the same institute. So they could connect with me. And they didn't tell me upar ka acha acha story. They actually told me the difficulties, the struggles, because I said, we don't want people to get the wrong impression that everything is all cool and easy. If they're going to get into it, they should at least get a clear picture कि कितना मेहनत है उसमें, कितना struggle है. So I think that honesty helped a lot, and since the stories were so inspiring, I think that got translated in the book.
And did you expect that the book will be such a runaway success?
No, as I said, I wrote the book with zero expectations. I just wrote the book that I thought needed to be written. Actually, the entire book was written and produced in 8 months, from October to December of 2007. I did the interviews. I traveled to 6 cities. But when the book was released, it just got such a great response that then we thought that let's publish a few copies and put them into the bookstores. So
who is we?
So we is basically Sandeep Bikhchandani and Sunil Handa, who's been my mentor and who's been a professor of entrepreneurship at IMA for many, many years. So instead of going to a traditional publisher, we did get a publisher. He wanted to publish it after 8 months. So we said, our book is ready, so why do we need to wait for 8 months? So abhi nikal dete hain. So Eklavya Foundation published the book on behalf of IIM Ahmedabad. And yeah, it just started selling. I had no idea that it would be, such a bestseller. And I don't think anyone can start out to write a bestseller. It's like having the right book at the right time and which hits a certain chord with people. And we didn't do anything great. We did the same 3-4 book launches in Crossword and Landmark. And we gave copies to Crossword Ahmedabad, and from there Crossword Bombay wanted to buy it. So it just, by word of mouth, it spread. And I remember one of the first emails I got was from this book. We had put the email IDs of all the entrepreneurs as well as mine in the book, so that people could reach out. And somebody from Bangalore wrote a mail saying that I read your book and I quit my job. So yeah.
I couldn't put the book down. First of all, it was extremely simple to read. I think that's your style. Your flagship style is to make it easy to have a little bit of Hindi and make it conversational. So for me, I do take 2-3 days to read books of that size. I think it's a 250 page book, and
50, yeah.
And I remember I couldn't put it down. I read it at one go, and I said, I want to read the next story and the next story. So I remember the feeling that I had when I read the book. And I'm just jumping to the next question, which is something we discussed when we were working together, is that you said that you sometimes when you write, you feel you're channeled. It's not you writing, and you feel that there's a higher force that is working through you. So could you share something about that? Because you are definitely a gifted writer. Your books, you can't just become a bestseller of 10 books without any formal training, which I don't believe you have in writing. Am I wrong in saying that?
Yeah, I don't have any formal training, but then I don't think most writers have formal training. It's more of, the more you write, the more confident you get, or you're able to be in flow. I think that's what I talk about, being in a state of flow. So now I do online writing workshops for general public, where I say, okay, come to my workshop and in 3 hours you'll write a short story. And the whole point is that when you're in flow, you can do it. You don't have to be a very accomplished writer. Just the fact that everyone has stories, you can tell them. Yes, if you want to be a professional writer, there is a mix of talent and hard work, both are required. But as you know, even Elizabeth Gilbert talks about it in her TED talk and in her book, Big Magic, is that there is uh, every artist. If you see any musician, dancer, writer, poet, somebody who's painting, when they're in the process of doing their work, they're definitely in a different zone. And a lot of times you are receiving inputs from a higher source, because you might start with X and end up in a totally different direction, because that's where the story took you, that's where the character took you. The words just start coming, and you are like the instrument through whom the work is being done. So it's like kind of difficult to explain, but I'm
No,
sure
but you explained it. You explained it, and you explained it well.
Yeah, so I would hope everyone should experience this in some part of their life. So maybe it doesn't happen to you with writing, but something else. Maybe you're cooking, or maybe you're, you know, I mean, it's that state where you just feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself. It could be, if you do that as your profession, if you find that there is something you're really good at and which puts you in a state of flow, and you can um, make a living out of it, that's the most ideal, I think. But if not, at least on a day to day basis, everyone should experience a few moments of flow.
Now I will ask you the question, which is I think I need to ask for this channel more to inspire other women. So, how old are you, Rashmi?
How old am I? Yeah, I turned 50 in May this year. Yeah. But according to Google, apparently I'm only 35. I don't know, somebody's put some weird thing online, and every year people are wishing me, and I'm wondering that how could I have been in IM at the age of 6 or something? I don't know. So, yeah.
Okay, and has age ever been a barrier? As in, I think it worked against you when you were younger from the experience you just shared. But today, I ask you as a 50-year-old woman.
I see two things. First of all, I mean, I've never felt discriminated against as a woman. Like on Women's Day, people ask me, how does it feel to be a woman author? And I'm like, but I don't understand that. Where does the woman part come in this? Okay. Is there anything, any barrier to women entering the same profession as me? I feel that there isn't. I may have experienced some obstacles in life, but like any other person, I feel I've never felt that. I've never been so conscious of it. Even if those obstacles were there, then I just said, Auntie, this is how it is, and you have to get on with it. You have to make your way and achieve, and basically, success is the best way to, I think, tackle all these issues. If you're really clear on your goal, if my goal was always to be an excellent writer, and the person I would compare with was my own self, that okay, I should be proud of the work I'm doing. It should be of a very high standard. Even if I'm working in Times of India and वहाँ पे चलता है काम, maybe हो जाएगा काम, I will not lose my promotion or something like that. But I always wanted to be better than that. So I think I'm not denying that some women have experienced it, but I haven't. And when I was young, I think I was pretty arrogant. I was pretty full of myself. I was like, I can do anything. I never took it as a disadvantage. And as I've grown older, also, I don't feel that I'm too old and, over the hill or something like that, because I am constantly looking for ways to grow and evolve myself.
No, I'm saying it from, where the people you work with, do you see that as a disadvantage or it's not there at all?
See, when I was running Jam, everybody was younger than me. Okay, fine. Okay. And I was the boss. And I don't think I really, these thoughts didn't come to my mind. I don't know. I feel like if you keep focusing on them, then that's the reality you see. And after that, as an author, I've never felt that I'm a woman or I'm so many years old or whatever, because I feel like my work and my, my purpose speaks for itself. My purpose is basically to empower people to, achieve what they want to do in life. So if I go to give talks, before COVID, I used to visit 40 to 50 colleges and schools and institutions every year. I used to physically go there to all parts of India. And yeah, I mean, everywhere, whether it's Bihar, whether it's, Andhra Pradesh, whether it's Assam, any place you go, there are always people who are hungry to receive that message. Okay. So now I'm teaching. I mean, that's like an extension of the same work, except it's, with a smaller group of people. So I teach at Ashoka University. I teach my own courses through my website. And again, it's my intention to empower you. Like, see, you come to me, I teach you to write a short story. Now, after that, you can write as many short stories as you want, right?
Yeah.
I don't want you to then do a 16-week course with me in which every week I have to give you one small little pearl of wisdom. So I think you have to constantly reinvent yourself. If you do the same thing, you get bored, you feel jaded. And so that would be my advice. And if you're feeling that you're what is called as over the hill, just find something new which excites you, which interests you, where you can again, sort of begin the ascent. I don't mean that everyone has to reach the top in any particular way that as others have defined, but as long as you feel that there is growth within me. I mean, I really didn't know I could teach. I know the first time I did that workshop, I don't know. I just prepared something and I said, let's see kya hota hai. There are 20 people on the other side of the Zoom screen. I don't know whether they're going to write anything, whether it's going to, be worth their time. But, it did pay off. So,
in fact, I'm going to share that link at the base of all the channels wherever we upload this interview. So, definitely people can reach out to be part of these workshops. And, being someone who has worked with you and learned a lot from you, I would definitely recommend it. So, in fact, I want to ask one of the questions related to your writing, which is about the English aspect of it. I think you write, you mix a little bit of Hindi when you're writing your English books, your books in English, I mean. And I think it also adds to the flavor of the writing, but I think this irks a few people who spoke to me when I was working in your team, and they were like, it's not like good English, the books you guys write. And so what is your I mean, these traditional editors and readers, old school readers, don't like this kind of language. So, what is your take on that?
Yeah, I've always been like this. When I was working at The Independent, and every week I had to go and show that page indie to my editor, Deena Vakil. And she would literally turn up her nose looking at the things that, were being published because they would have English in them. And my point was, this is how young people think and speak. So if I write in Shakespeare in English or N.N. Martin English, it's not true to the spirit of youth or even, other people. But, over the years, what's happened, all newspaper, magazine outlets, everybody's doing it now, right? We're mixing up a little bit of Hindi and English.
Yeah, because it's conversational. I think people
conversational. Yeah. So if I do it in a book, it's not because I don't know how to write the perfect language. I was a school topper. I was very good in English. I still have N.N. Martin graded book with me. The point is that that's not how people talk. So if you have to read the book and you have to feel you're carried along with the book, with the words, with the story, it has to sound real and natural. So I deliberately leave it that way. Okay, to capture the essence of being with that person in an interview. So it's a style, and everyone doesn't like it, and it's okay if everyone doesn't like it because I can't please everyone all the time. I do get some hate mail from people, but I also meet so many people who say that they love my books because of this. See, unfortunately, we have this great divide between popular books and literature. Anything which sells a lot is not even considered literature because it's like, oh, it's for masses. So literature seems to be something which is very high flown, has ornate language. And of course, yes, there are authors who really are very, who write beautiful prose. You actually admire what, the words they've written, but I am not one of them. Like when I first read Arundhati Roy's book, the one which got the Booker Prize.
God of Small Things.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, every sentence is written so beautifully. You do admire it, but I can't write like that. Okay, I'm not that kind of writer. So you have to know who you are and be true to that. So I'm not doing this English thing because it's a requirement of the market, or this is what people want and this is what sells. No, that's how I've always been.
Yeah, and just my two bits to the fact. I mean, The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy is my favorite book as well. But she wrote one book, and then after 20 years or so, she wrote another book. So I think when you're churning out, books also at a great speed, you cannot focus on every single sentence. You just want to get a few stories out, and you want to make it easy for a lot of people to read it. I mean, that was the funda with
Yeah, I didn't want to be that person who just wrote one book, and actually the second book was much tougher to write because first तो लिख दिया without any expectation. अभी second how to write, and replicate that success. So then I just thought that let me write a book which helps a lot of people. And since I was getting emails from readers saying that, ma'am, tell me how to join IIM so I can be success story. So I said, well, let me write a book saying that MBA is not required to be an entrepreneur. You could be even 10th pass or 12th pass. In fact, in the past, people used to think that having a degree is
prerequisite.
No. I mean, most of the famous entrepreneurs like Bill Gates or Dhirubhai Ambani have not finished school or college, na.
Yeah.
Being a dropout was considered to be important to be an entrepreneur.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the opposite story. So Connect the Dots was my second book, which was about people who don't have an MBA degree but still have done very amazing things in life. And I didn't again think about, so that's been my philosophy, that let me just think about who is there a group of people whom this book can help. If I wrote a book on women entrepreneurs eventually, but I didn't want to write about women separately because I thought कि यार women and men में कोई फर्क है नहीं. But when I did it in a very gender blind way, I would hardly include women. If I just looked at the business and the merits of that business, I wouldn't really come across that many women who would qualify in that book. So then I did a whole book on women entrepreneurs. Yeah.
In fact, I remember having this conversation with you that publishers who you approached for women entrepreneurs, they said that not many people want to read books on women entrepreneurs. So if you could just touch upon that.
So women entrepreneurs, my book came out in 2013. So again, maybe because I have been a journalist, so I always look at what are the trends coming up. So much before women entrepreneurs came in the limelight, I was feeling that this is going to be the future because women do want to make use of their education and earn and make a difference, but maybe they don't want to be part of this rat race and 9 to 5 grind.
That's true. Yeah.
So they're going to chart their own path. But yeah, I mean, they may have different way of looking at life and what is important in life than men. That's what I found when doing the book.
So, and what about the sales figures, like of specifically books which were written on women entrepreneurs? Did they sell as well as the books which were written on male entrepreneurs?
So I think it's not about women and men, but in general. So if you see this thing behind me, this purple, there's one, there's a
yes.
Yeah, that is actually my publisher sent it to me when this book had crossed 50,000 copies few years ago, 3-4 years ago. So naturally, it didn't sell as much as Stay Hungry, Stay Foolish. But then, if you see any author, they usually have 1 or 2 titles which just become a runaway hit, and others are popular, but they don't achieve the same success. But each one has its own merit, and it was fun doing this book, and I met some amazing people, and I think it's impacted a lot of lives. And I even specifically got one email from a girl who said that I was contemplating suicide, and then I happened to see this book on the shelf. It was lying there for a year, but somehow I opened it that night. I started reading, and then by morning I decided, okay, I don't want to do any such thing. So I'm saying, even if it helped that one girl, okay, I think it's not about, for me, these thousands and millions of books which were sold, but it's just about these kind of messages which you get, which make you feel that, I mean, what I'm doing is important and it makes a difference. There is a purpose to it. The purpose is not just, doing it as a, livelihood, but it's something which is having an impact on people. So all the effort is worth it.
been amazing, and I think you're absolutely right. I think for every writer, they just want to hear this, that they motivated, even if they motivate one person, their writing is worth it. So I totally agree with you. And the two examples you have shared, as you said, the power of a story, you don't know how deep and how far it can go. So, Rashmi, just two more questions. One is, you've always been a non-fiction writer, and recently I have read that you're going into you're getting into writing fiction. So, if can you touch upon why this decision? What prompted this decision?
Yeah, it's basically due to COVID last year. I was really bored and I thought that this is not the time to sit and write, stories of entrepreneurs, because everyone is struggling, everyone is confused about the future. And especially last year in April and May, we really didn't know what was the way forward. So, just to keep myself occupied at that time, I started a project called Story a Day for 30 Days, in which I wrote a fiction story for 30 days. And I wasn't even sure if I have that many ideas, what will I write? But then somehow I got into it, and every day I would write a story. Midway, I, created a simple website and started publishing it. And so I realized that fiction has its own maza. Like, in a non-fiction work, you have to stick to the facts. I mean, of course, it's a lot of fun to collect the facts, meet the people, get to know, glean little nuggets. But finally, you cannot change what happened. You can narrate it in different ways. You can add some dialogue. But, if something, if this was the path of a person's life, you have to pretty much stick to that. But in fiction, I can be God. I can, like take my and so it was been a lot of fun, and that inspired me to think of writing more for television or OTT or films. So I did a screenplay writing course, and currently I'm writing a screenplay. There's a different technique and different mindset you need to write a movie or write an OTT web series. So that's what I hope to do now.
When can we see? I mean, when is it expected to be on screens?
God knows, Baba. Pehle मैं लिखूंगी, then like how you go around trying to get your startup funded to get someone to make your film, na? It's like that. It's not. It's the same process. It's like every script you write is a little startup which has to go to 10 producers.
I thought it was commissioned, but but do update us so that we can put it under the interview so people can go watch it.
Yes, sure. And of course, I will sell it. I'm sure I will. But currently, I'm still writing it. So you see, there is a whole process, as I said, of reinventing yourself. And after for the last 2-3 years, I've been feeling that I need to do something new. And maybe this was the opportunity. Because of COVID coming, I had to stop all my traveling and lecturing and all that. So I'm stuck in this one place. Then I have to do something to keep myself, stimulated.
If you could just give one piece of advice to women over 40, what would it be?
I think one of the issues that women post 40 do face is, health issues related to hormonal imbalances. And I think all the stress that's built up over the years, suddenly it starts showing in your body in different ways. So that's why there's so much of, I think, effort on our parts to, eat well and do more exercise. And I think when you're young, you can abuse your body and get away with it. But over time, you realize that this is the biggest asset you have. अगर body नहीं है तो क्या करोगे उससे आगे? So everyone's become very conscious, I think, and I think it's important to really take care of yourself physically also. I mean, I've always been a very mentally oriented person, so for me, anyways, it's an effort to do anything to exercise, do yoga and all that. But I am trying to get into that zone.
One question which all people who write or who want to write, and in fact, my entire journalism cohort, this is something, even if we connect after 15-20 years, we're just asking each other this question that, if anyone has taken to writing as a profession and, is doing nothing else, does the money, because content is something that, people are always trying to negotiate to get it at a cheaper rate, and they try to get students fresh out of college to do their content, and they compare it to someone who has spent years of experience honing their skills and writing and has relevant experience. So I just want to ask you this, that can a person make money simply by being an author in India today? enough money?
I mean, see, first of all, what is enough? I don't know. If you're going to compare it with salaries of, say, investment banking, obviously it may not, line up. But of course, we don't even know if investment banking will be a profession in the near future because it's probably not going to exist 10 years from now. So the world is changing a lot. I think everyone has to find their sweet spot. Actually, you know that earlier I was doing, this thing called Bushfire, under which we were taking commission projects. But the problem was that except for you, the other writers whom I hired, they didn't deliver the book. Ultimately, Rashmi ended up writing 4 of the books, which were handed over to certain accomplished writers, given a brief. I don't want to name the people, Now, the point is that sometimes writers are very fixed that मैं ये काम नहीं करूँगा, मैं ये काम नहीं करूँगी, this is beneath me, this is, you can't be like that. If there is a market for biographical writing and it exists today, then do that. Now, there may not be a market for your poetry. Like maybe, I don't know if you can make a living selling your poetry, but you can do spoken poetry. For the market for poetry is to do performance. Then you have to go here and there, stand there and, wow the audience with not just your words, but your, कहने का तरीका. So comedy and poetry have become performance arts. Writing, there is a demand for certain kind of writing. Some writing you do for yourself, for your own pleasure. If you want to make writing as a career, then you do have to look at what will sell and then, mold yourself. There could be many niches where there is a demand. So then you decide that, okay, this is my, not the ideal writing I would like to do, but then that I can keep doing on the side. But if I want to do bread and butter writing, then I have to be open to all kinds of projects and all kinds of.
And meet the demand of the market.
Yeah, and once you do a good job and you become an established person that way, who's relied on and who people will come to. So you can be a one-man, two-man show also with your own content writing company. And yeah, you would have to, of course, spend a year or two building your name and having a couple of books in your portfolio or a couple of, certain kind of writing in your portfolio. I think keep seeing what changes are happening in the world and adapt to it instead of crying, ye nahi ho raha, wo nahi ho raha. Abhi kya, matlab, the world is not going to stop for you. World is changing. There are no more jobs available of the kind which existed 25 years ago.
So
right. Features editor, kuch bhi nahi hai. Same person is doing everything and everything is getting automated. So find something that, you like to do and for which there is demand and go for it. And learn some new skills, right? I mean, maybe there's some new skills you need also to go with it. So,
yeah, like you said, I mean, you have spent the lockdown upskilling yourself to write for screen and to write fiction. So, I think nobody can have an excuse. If you can do it at 50, I think there is nobody who has an excuse. At 50 and after such success in the field of writing.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, I just don't even feel I'm 50. Like, I feel, yeah, this year all my friends whom I grew up with, we celebrated our 50th birthday. And none of us feel like we're 50 and like it's so over the hill. I think I felt much worse at 30. 30, like I had a small baby crying in my arms and I was like, my youth is over.
You're just saying it like it is, Rashmi. Everybody feels it. You're just saying it like it is.
So at 50, actually, I think it's very liberating. You can do whatever you want to do. You have at least, say, 25 good years ahead of you, God willing. Currently, my mentor with whom I'm doing screenplay writing, she is 75. Her name is Aruna Raje. She's a very accomplished film director and editor, writer. And she was the first female graduate in the editing course at FTII. So just look at her and think that at this age also she's so energetic, she's so full of life and planning her next movie, mentoring students. So I want to be like her. And I don't think in her mind also, I mean, you want to work till the last day and keep, contributing something, learning something.
Amen. Amen. Absolutely. And thank you so much, Rashmi. It's been a fabulous interview, and I think people are going to get super inspired by this. I mean, besides your books, I'm just so glad you've done this interview with me. I think it's going to be one of the most watched interviews on YouTube. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Suman. I mean, it's always good to talk to you. I hope that we can meet rather than like do these normal interactions because it's been a long time since we met. But wishing you all the best for this new venture. And I'll be logging in and checking out whatever you are posting.
You're watching Not Just Auntie with Suman Adepalli.